Hi, this is Bill Whalen from GoodFellows. The Hoover Institution is proud to announce two national competitions honoring the life and work of Thomas Sowell, one of the most influential public thinkers of our time. For high school and college students, the Thomas Sowell Essay Contest is a chance to engage deeply with his ideas, whether by applying them to a pressing issue in society or by reflecting on how Dr. Sowell's writings have shaped your own worldview. For creators of all kinds, the Multimedia Creator Competition invites bold, thoughtful storytelling in video form, no longer than 3 minutes, responding to a simple but powerful question: what lesson or teaching for Thomas Sowell do Americans most need to learn or remember today? Each winner will receive $5,000 plus a paid trip to the Hoover Institution here at Stanford University for a special celebration in Dr. Sowell's honor. Details and submission links are available at the following URL: hoover.org/Thomas-Sowell-legacy. Let me repeat that: hoover.org/Thomas-Sowell-legacy. Good luck. We hope to see you here at Hoover in the near future. Welcome back to GoodFellows, a Hoover Institution broadcast examining social, economic, political, and geopolitical concerns. I'm Bill Whalen. I'm a distinguished policy fellow here at the Hoover Institution. I'll be your moderator today. This is a point where I usually introduce at least two or three of my colleagues, but today it's just one good fellow joining us, and that is Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. In case you're meeting the Lieutenant General for the first time, a few things to know about him. He is the Fouad and Michelle Ajami Senior Fellow here at the Hoover Institution. He is, of course, a former presidential national security advisor. He is a best-selling author. As I look over my bookcase, I have two of his most recent books. One is called At War with Ourselves. This is about his one-year tour of duty in the first Trump White House. Before that, he wrote the excellent book Battlegrounds, which is also the title of a video series he does for the Hoover Institution, interviewing world leaders. What else to say about Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster? Devoted about 35 years of public service to his country. And if you follow GoodFellows, he is our resident inveterate optimist. H.R., it's great to see you.
Hey, Bill, great to be with you.
So in quasi-Japanese fashion, HR, I thought we'd start the show with a exchange of gifts, or at least one gift. For you, my friend, would you like to open it up and take a look at it? Because it gets to, I think, the part of you.
Very thoughtful of you. I love it. Go Eagles. And there's a cheesesteak on there, no doubt, from D'Alessandro's, the best cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Thank you. Thanks so much, man.
It's a gag gift because General McMaster lives and dies by his beloved Philadelphia Eagles. Football season is about to start, and as his wife will attest when she joins us later on the show, it's kind of a pair of socks he can wear once before she either throws them away or puts them in the back. But cheesesteaks and Eagles, what is it about cheesesteaks that is so Philadelphia, HR?
Hey, it's a great sandwich, you know. I mean, and it is very Philadelphia. I mean, I don't know what it is about it, but people talk about like Geno's and Pat's. They're across from each other, and there's a whole ritual on how you order at Pat's in particular. You have to say cheese with or cheese without, and then wit is with onions, without is without onions, or plain wit and plain without. And if you don't order that way, you have to go to the back of the line. So, but at D'Alessandro's in my neighborhood, the Roxborough neighborhood, the line is always around the corner. I mean, it's so good, and it's been so good for generations.
Back in 2004, HR, it was also the beginning of the end of John Kerry's presidential campaign. They were taking him around the upper, the Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan, trying to make him look like a regular guy. So he goes to one of the cheesesteak places, and he gets in line and comes to order. He asks for one with Swiss cheese. The whole place just comes to a stop and looks at him at that point.
Oh, too funny. Too funny.
So this is our third solo GoodFellows HR, and in the past two with John Cochran and Sir Neil Ferguson, I made it a point to ask them how they came about what they do now, how John became an economist, how Neil became a very renowned historian. And in their cases, it's the same story as HR because it's kind of roundabout juries. John went to MIT and at first didn't want to become an economist. He kind of gravitated into it. Neil comes from a family of scientists, so history was something he discovered when he got into uni, as they say in the UK. But in your case, your story is different. Here I refer to your excellent Substack called History We Don't Know, and a post that you wrote about Chuck Bednarik, who, for those not familiar with Philadelphia sports, is a Philadelphia legend. He was an Iron Man of the Eagles and a boyhood idol of HR's. And you wrote this on the occasion of his 100th birthday. And let me read this back to you. Bernard pulled his Eagles championship and NFL Hall of Fame rings off, fingers mangled by multiple breaks, and passed them over to me. Go ahead, try them on, he said. They, of course, did not fit. He asked me what I wanted to do in life. I told him that I wanted to go to West Point and serve as an officer in the U.S. Army. He said something like, "You can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish if you put your mind to it." Now, HR, my sister's oldest grandson just celebrated his 9th birthday. He wants to be an NFL player. He wants to be a baseball player. He's in 9-year-old La La Land. But here you are. You were 9 years old, I think, when this happened, but you had kind of your path planned out. So, how did this happen so early in life?
Yeah, I always wanted to lead soldiers in the army. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, and to be responsible for building teams committed to an important mission, and I was just always drawn to it. I mean, my earliest memories were, playing army, with my friends, and organizing them into a squad, and I just always wanted to do it. And I think it had a lot to do with my mom, who sort of was a tremendous teacher and who got me interested in history. And I read a lot of the youth biographies, about military biographies and adventurers and so forth, and frontiersmen. One of my favorites, still one of my favorites today, and I recommended his biography, the adult biography, Don Higginbotham's biography, and there's another also excellent biography of Daniel Morgan, and American Frontiersman, I think was the subtitle of the youth biography that I read. And I just was always drawn to military service.
So, HR, you graduate from West Point in 1984. Tell us about 4 years at West Point and how your love for history is incorporated into the other studies, because you just can't go to West Point and major in history and just do a liberal arts education.
Right. Well, you can now.
Well, you
But you
can.
also have to take a very strong core curriculum that exposes you to all sorts of other disciplines and courses. But you couldn't major when I was there. You could have a concentration, but everybody got a bachelor's of science and engineering, whether you wanted one or not. But I did take as many history courses as I could. I took a great diplomatic history course from one of my old rugby coaches who became one of my mentors. This was then, Major Betson, who then retires as a colonel. Fantastic person, and was my sponsor. My first sponsor at West Point, who then left after 2 years, and so then Major Betson was my sponsor. Was
Mhm.
Cole Kingseed. I just had dinner with him at West Point. Got to reconnect with him. He taught the world history course, and then taught in the history department as a permanent professor when I came back as a member of the rotating faculty, as a captain and a major teaching history there. But hey, how can you not absorb the history of West Point? It's so connected to the founding of our nation, to the revolution, and then of course all the artifacts that are there. And there used to be this poster that you would see it down in the history department area, said, much of the history we teach was made by the people we taught. It would have MacArthur and Eisenhower and Patton and so forth on it. But yeah, so I was always interested in history. My concentration was international relations, but I took a lot of history courses.
You mentioned some mentors while you were at the point. Tell us a few mentors during your climb through the ranks.
Well, I've got to mention my first battalion commander, Billy J. McGowan. I wrote a little bit about him a few years ago, and he was an extraordinary person. He's from a sharecropper family. Was drawn to service himself. Came into our army and as an armor officer. Served with distinction in Vietnam, and he was just a charismatic leader, larger than life person, and he really cared a lot about junior officers. So you'd be on a tank range or something, and then you just feel this big hand come over your shoulder, and it was Colonel McGowan. How you doing, Lieutenant? And he gave me some strange jobs for a brand new second lieutenant. He allowed me to be the support platoon leader. I'll tell you, Bill, I didn't know what a support platoon was. It's of course critical to the battalion's mission, because it's all the fuel and ammunition and so forth. And I was ready to be a tank platoon. I'm like, what is this support platoon? It was the best. It was the best leadership experience I could have had as a new second lieutenant. Got to know the whole battalion, and then went on to a series of other jobs there. But he was one of my first key mentors. And another was a guy named Tom Dials, he was the division cavalry squadron commander, and and he ran a division wide scout competitions when I was a scout platoon leader. And I had these great sergeants, which is the key to success in the military. A lot of your mentors really are your sergeants. And in this case, I had a great platoon sergeant named Ed Romo, and I had a scout section sergeant named Joe Zettelmoyer, who was just fantastic. He was my senior scout. And so we won that division competition, like first, second, third sections were all 166 armor. And so Tom Dials, the commander, he said, I want you to come to Reforger with us, the return of forces to Germany. Big maneuver exercise in Germany. So he brings my platoon over there. I think he also grabbed me because I'm a rugby player and they were going to play a rugby match over there. So he's looking for a few ringers to bring in. And then he gave us these great missions. So I got really excited. I was always excited about the Army. But, I told Katie, my wife, when we got married, I said, hey, I think I'm going to get out after 5 years. I want to do my duty for 5 years, and then maybe I'll go to law school and that sort of thing. I came back from that Reforger exercise. I went to a right arm night at the officers club with my sergeants, and they said, "What the hell are you doing getting out of the Army? I mean, you love this stuff, right? You should stay in." So I went home that night and said to Katie, "Hey, how about staying in?" She's like, "Oh, fine, that sounds good to me." So I returned my ticket that I got to fly to Chicago. I think I was going to interview for Procter and Gamble or a big company or something like that. I had bought a suit, Bill. I bought a suit and everything, but I didn't wound up not needing it for a while.
That's funny. I looked up your various awards and commendations. HR, my God, it's like the opening scene in Patton, where they go down his uniform and just show everything. By my count, and you can correct me if you'd like, I count at least 12 military decorations, 9 service medals, plus a handful of badges, patches, and foreign decorations. That's just a lot of hardware. Congratulations. Here's my question to you, HR. If you were to have one of your grandchildren sit in your lap and show them one of your medals or commendations and use that as kind of a window to what grandpa did for his country, which medal would you pick?
Well, of course, when you're awarded these things, you think that you're not deserving because there are individual awards, but it's always a collective effort in the Army. So if I were to point to an award, it wouldn't be because I received it. It would be because it would allow me to tell a story about some fantastic and courageous, extremely dedicated soldiers that I got to serve with. And so maybe the one I would select was the one from Desert Storm, and tell the story about the Battle of 7th Easting and how our cavalry troop really achieved a lopsided victory against a numerically superior enemy because of the way we fought together as a team, and how we were bound together by certain mutual trust, common purpose, but really affection, Bill. I mean, that cavalry troop, as any really good military unit, it takes on the qualities of a family. And what allows you to be courageous in battle, and I think this was the case with our troop. I know this was the case with our troop, is you're more fearful of letting your fellow soldier down than you are of any enemy bullet. So it's kind of that sense of honor and the willingness to take risks and sacrifice for one another.
So you show them your silver star.
That would be it. Yeah, that would be it.
Tell us a bit about what it's like to go into battle and then recover from battle. Thanks to Hollywood, we have all these impressions about what it's like to prepare for war. Sad scenes of men signing insurance forms if they're going to storm the beaches of Normandy, people writing letters to their loved ones, things to that effect. But how do you prepare going into battle knowing that the next day might be your last day?
Well, I think, Bill, part of it is that you prepare your whole career for it. I mean, I wanted to, I begged my parents to go to a military high school because I wanted to be in the military. And went to West Point, so I felt like I was preparing myself for that moment. You always ask that question, right? I think,
Right.
Young men and women who come to the Army, how I react. Will I have what it takes? That kind of thinking about war, because you read about it from a historical perspective and other people's experiences, and learn about it that way as well. So I read a lot of firsthand accounts of combat, leadership in combat. James McDonough's platoon leader is fantastic, by the way, in that connection on Vietnam. Charles B. McDonald's book on Company Commander about his World War II experience. And so I try to prepare myself by learning from the experiences of others. And then when you say goodbye to your family, I mean, I just don't dwell on the negative. I mean, I think, I think my family's like that too. I mean, it's not productive, I think, to engage in sort of what could happen, for example. And
Mhm.
and I think in combat, it's important for you to realize, hey, not every bullet's got your name on it. So hopefully you'll be fortunate. As Churchill said, there is nothing more exhilarating than to be shot at without effect, and I've found that to be the case. Um, and really, what happens in battle, and in terms of preparation for it, you should know that you're going to do your duty. I mean, I think as for the reason I mentioned already, which is you don't want to let your fellow troopers down, but also as a leader, you're kind of insulated from fear, Bill. Like I can't remember, I don't recall feeling fear in combat, and I think that's because I was preoccupied with ensuring that I made the right decisions, made timely decisions to ensure that our troopers had the best chance to overmatch the enemy and to come out of combat actions without suffering casualties.
How important is the role of faith in all of this?
It's extremely important, Bill. There's the old saying, like, there's no atheists in foxholes. Hey, I think that is truly the case. And Bill, I have to tell you, there are things that I can't explain that have happened to me in combat, honestly. I think it's divine providence. I mean, maybe others could come up with an explanation, but there's certain things I just cannot explain. Rolling down a street in Talifa or Baghdad, and feeling like a tap on my shoulder or something, and it's saying stop, driver stop, scan the area, and then seeing a roadside bomb. Just getting that feeling.
Wow.
Um, in Desert Storm, and I don't think I've ever told the story publicly like this, or on a show that has the distribution, thankfully to our listeners and watchers, that Goodfellows has. But before Desert Storm, I was thinking about replacing. I was going to replace one of my sergeants as a
Mhm.
platoon sergeant. This was a great sergeant, great non-commissioned officer. Name is Dean Turan. We stay in contact all the time. We call each other every Christmas Eve, and uh, and and um and he just wasn't ready to be a platoon sergeant in my view. He's a great scout squad leader, and so I said, "Hey, Sergeant Turan, I think I'm going to replace you here, but I want to give you an option. Do you want to stay in the troop, or do you want to transfer to another cavalry troop and get a fresh start?" And he said, "Well, let me pray about it." I was kind of skeptical, Bill. I'm like, I mean, just tell me what you think. What's your, what your preference is. And so he came back the next day, and he said, "Hey, sir, I prayed about it." Now we had not yet been alerted to Desert Storm yet. Our cavalry troop had not been. Our regiment had not been. And he said, "I prayed, and three things came to me." He said, "The first is that I should stay in the troop. The second is that we are going to go to war, and you will make the right decision at the right time, and as a result, we will all come back alive."
Mhm.
And he said, "The third thing is a verse of the Bible." And he cited the verse of the Bible, and he said, "He will make seeing eyes blind and blind eyes see." And then, if you fast forward from that, this was in the fall of 1990 to February 26, 1991, the day of the Battle of 73 Easting. It had rained all night. It was fog in the morning. Then it was blowing sand, high winds. All of our helicopters were grounded. Your visibility was very limited. I mean, you couldn't see very far at all because of the sandstorm. And then when we first made contact with the enemy, we then assaulted. We began to advance further to the east, and my tank came over this imperceptible rise. And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, Bill, it's like the curtain lifted. Sandstorm ended, you know, and the wind. Our soldiers remember the wind having been in our face. You're blowing the sound of our initial engagements away from the enemy, maybe giving us more of an element of surprise. But then the wind was at our backs after we crested this rise. And so the next day, this February 27th, Dean Turan came up to me in the desert in Iraq, and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to tell you what I told you in Bamberg, Germany, which is where we were before we deployed." He said, "I want you to tell me." And I just got, I got goosebumps, Bill. But there's so many other, I could give you tons of examples of this. And then also, I think it's important, when you're considering, the war, a battle, going into battle, which is an activity that involves killing and the prospect of death,
Mhm.
that you consider the spiritual dimension of readiness and the moral and ethical dimension of preparation for combat. Talk to your soldiers about why the war is just in this case, evicting Iraq from Kuwait and giving Kuwait back to the Kuwaitis, right? Ending the brutalization of the Kuwaiti people and the looting of that country, because soldiers had these questions in mind, and I would go to every service. I'm Catholic, but I went to the Catholic service, the Protestant service, and the Jewish service, and so I could be there with all my soldiers. First, it's important they know maybe their commander's not a heathen. Maybe that gives them a leg up a little bit, and it can allay their concerns. But also, also it's a great venue to talk to soldiers, and it would be often, after these services at night in the middle of your perimeter, in the middle of the desert, right, with the panoramic view of the stars, and you're walking back to your tank with one of your soldiers, and your soldier says to you, "Hey, I'm worried. I'm worried about whether it's the right thing for me to kill enemy soldiers," because he was a religious person. And we're walking back from the service, and then I would have it explained to him about the justness of the war, and then the same soldier, after we were engaged in occupying southern Iraq after the war, we're in the town of Al Naziriyah. We're actually at Abraham's birthplace, Ur of the Chaldees. The same soldier came up to me and he said, and he saw the brutality that Iraq had visited on their own people, right, on the Shia population in the south, the mass executions they were conducting in the city near us. And he said, you're right. It was a just fight, So anyway, sorry to go on about it, but it's a huge part of preparation for combat. And I think because of our tradition of separation of church and state and so forth, we don't talk about it enough. And I think it's important for commanders to make sure your soldiers have access to religious services. And then, of course, Bill, it's really important to honor your dead. It's part of the grieving process. Grief work is a command responsibility, just like any other form of preparation for combat, and being responsible for the mental, psychological, spiritual health of your troopers.
Mm-hmm. One thing our viewers may not know about you, HR, when we introduce you as a presidential national security advisor, that means that you're in charge of the National Security Council in the White House. This puts you in very elite historical company. Our boss, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Henry Kissinger, and so forth. But you were doing this while you were on active duty, which is a rarity in Washington because Congress always wants to draw very fine lines between military active and military retired. But you could have cycled back into the Army after a year in the White House and gone for a fourth star. So why didn't you go for the fourth?
Yeah, well, Bill, when I got the call to interview for the job as National Security Advisor, I was planning to put in my request for retirement. It seemed clear to me at the time there wasn't a 4-star job for me, in the Army or in the Joint Force at that point. And so when the call came out of the blue to interview for the job as National Security Advisor, I decided at that moment that I would retire out of that job. I didn't want to even give the impression that I took the job, to get a 4th star. And so I stuck to that. I was offered an opportunity to compete for various 4-star jobs while I was in the job as National Security Advisor. I would hope that was based on merit, but maybe it was some people wanted to get me out of that job too. Maybe that dynamic. But I said, hey, no thanks. I appreciate it. I'm going to do this job as long as I can, as long as I'm effective for President Trump. And when I'm done, I'm at peace with that, and I'll retire from the Army.
Right. Now, our viewers should know that the reason why you were just absolutely overdressed for this, I might point out, is you were just giving a speech over at the Hoover Institution's boot camp. This is something we do every summer. We bring in college age kids, and we call it a policy boot camp, and they hear from you and other Hoover figures and kind of just get a taste of what it's like to be a Hoover fellow, and hopefully spark their intellectual curiosity. I went over to see you speak, and then I was eavesdropping on some kids having lunch afterwards, and they said 2 things. Number one, what a great speech. And then number 2, they were kind of curious as to your politics. They couldn't quite figure out where you were on the spectrum. So let me now ask the question I look for you to artfully dodge, which is really, what is your worldview, HR? We always want to be people in the categories of left, right, center, conservative, libertarian. Where do you fall?
Well, I think that I would say that from a foreign policy perspective, that what I would call an internationalist. It's the people who are sort of part of the neo-isolationist movement would call me like a globalist, which is not the case. I believe in prioritizing American interests, but I believe that the way to achieve the best outcomes for Americans is through international cooperation, multinational cooperation. I also believe in remaining engaged internationally, because problems or challenges to our security and our prosperity that develop abroad can only be dealt with at an exorbitant cost once they reach our shores. I believe that America cannot solve the world's problems. We can't conciliate the furies of the Middle East, but we can catalyze. We can catalyze positive change by supporting those who share our principles and share our worldview. Recognize the benefits of representative government and rule of law and fundamental rights as those that are in the UN Charter, but are really the basic rights of freedom of speech and religion and assembly and so forth, and due process of law. And so I mean that's kind of my approach to it these days, Bill. Everything's become so partisan and vitriolic. I try to transcend it. I don't know if I'm succeeding. I hope I am. But I'd never been a political person in terms of partisan politics. I mean, I recognize that that war is an extension of politics. It's a political competition. There are political competitions we engage in. So you can't forswear politics. But I think in terms of partisan politics, it's gone too far. Like Bill, I never voted. I followed the example of George Marshall in an effort to keep that kind of bold line in place between partisan politics and our military. I've noticed with some dismay that both leaders in both political parties, not all of them, some leaders in both political parties are trying to drag the military, into political into partisanship. With this narrative maybe from the far left that the military is extremist, or from the far right, that the military is woke or they're woke generals. I mean, like, man, military is not extremist. Military is not woke. Keep the military out of your kind of your descent into the mud, because our institution can't afford it, and it's inimical to combat effectiveness, right? And we have to recognize, as senior officers, generals, even retired generals, that we owe our best advice, right? But once we cross the line to advocacy, you risk getting mired in politics. And by the way, for active duty generals, nobody elects generals or admirals to make policy, right? It's our civilian bosses that do that, who do that.
So if we could put Second Lieutenant McMaster on this Zoom call, and I'd get out of the way, and retired General McMaster could talk to Second Lieutenant McMaster after you explain to him what the heck the internet and Zoom are, what would you tell that young man coming out of West Point?
Yeah, I would tell him, what I figured out, I guess, over the years, which is don't worry about getting your preferred assignment, your preferred whatever, and job. This would be for anybody, because if you apply yourself and do your best, do the best job you can for your soldiers, for your mission, that everything will work out. So, Bill, I always knew I wanted to be in the Army. As I mentioned, I thought I was going to be out after 5 years. It didn't work out that way. Katie at my retirement party gave this roast speech, and she said, "Thank you for the bonus 29 years." And but then I wanted to be commissioned in aviation. I had read a great book called Chicken Hawk about Aero Scouts in Vietnam. I thought, man, I want to do that. I want to be an Aero Scout. And so I was commissioned in aviation, and so I was getting what I wanted. But aviation had just become a branch again in the Army ever since that sad day in 1947 when the Army Air Corps became the Air Force. And so I was on my way to Fort Rucker, Alabama, but first I had to go to basic course because the branch was not stood up yet at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So I'm at Armor Basic Course, the last M60A3 tank only course, right? No Abrams in there, and tanks were fine, but I wasn't really into them that much at the time. And they find astigmatism in my eye, disqualify me from flight school. They're like, "Hey, you're an armor officer now." I called up and I said, "Hey, this is Second Lieutenant McMaster," which always gets a warm reception at what they call Human Resources Command now. and I said, "I'd rather be an infantry officer. That was my second choice. Can I go to Fort Benning?" So they said, "No, Lieutenant, it's not cost effective. You're an armor officer now." And so I said, "Well, then in that case, I'd like to give you my preferred assignment because I'd like to go to Germany." And they said, "Oh, hey, Lieutenant, thank you for that preference. Fort Hood, Texas, it is." And so nothing worked out. I went to Ranger School, and then went to as I mentioned, 166 Armor, the Iron Knights of the 2nd Armored Division, the Hell on Wheels Division, General Patton's old division, and then General Ernest Harmon. Talk about a kick-ass commander. Ernest Harmon in World War II, and a great combined arms unit in the Second Armored Division. Sadly, now no, those colors are retired now of the Second Armored Division. But I get there, I get this support platoon. That wasn't my preference. So all these assignments, I mean, they never worked out. I went to the Second Cav Regiment in Germany. I'm like, okay, border cavalry troop. I can't wait to get to a cavalry troop. I wound up regimental headquarters, as the force modernization officer. I'm like, what is this? I'm not even, doing anything operational. I went to see the regimental commander, and I said, hey, there's nothing I'd rather do than command a cavalry troop in this regiment, but I'd rather command a shower and bath unit than do what I'm doing right now. And he said, all right, McMaster, you'll have a new job, next week. I'll reassign you as a plans officer. Get the hell out of my office. So I think, you can advocate for yourself, but really have confidence that things will work out, and I get these odd jobs in the Army, Bill, that were really, really great opportunities to learn, to grow, to build teams, not only within the military, but multinational and civilian military teams and so forth. So, hey, I would just say what I would tell myself as a young me, I would say, hey, don't worry about it. It's going to work out.
Okay, so HR, I'd like to now spring on you the Herbert Hoover questionnaire. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, question number 1, HR. What is the best sandwich? This would be the non-cheesesteak category.
Oh, well, I mean, of course, cheesesteak category is D'Alessandro's cheesesteak, but I would say Denix, which you can get at Reading Terminal in Philadelphia. Get the pork sandwich with broccoli rabe and provolone. I'm telling you, it's killer. Best sandwich in the world.
What is the scariest animal?
The scariest animal? Any animal. I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm afraid of animals. That's why. So, bear, lion. I don't like any of them. I'm a city guy. If I'm armed, I'm not afraid of them. But if I was like in the wilderness, maybe I guess crocodile. Crocodile's pretty scary.
That'd be my vote too. Yeah. Who's your hero of fiction?
Hero of fiction. Okay. Well, Sam Damon in Once an Eagle. How about that? How about, favorite character though in fiction would have to be Flashman. And if anybody hasn't read the Flashman series, you got to read it. You'll cry. You'll just cry if you're laughing so hard.
Favorite action movie?
Gosh, favorite action movie. Well, war movies, maybe. Does that include it? Maybe A Bridge Too Far? Bridge Too Far?
We, my friends, are the cavalry on the way to the rescue.
A Bridge Too Far.
Okay. Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Apples. Why?
Well, because I like them better. They're, I like to sometimes, if you're, with a little bit of peanut butter, like as a snack, it's a healthy snack with a little bit of protein. It's good.
Fair enough. Which talent that you currently do not possess that you most like?
I'd love to play a musical instrument. I think I'd love to be like Neil, maybe play the bass and just kind of chill in the back of a band playing the bass. Or maybe, if I could, if I could just learn maybe how to play Flashlight on the bass, maybe just do that. That'd be great.
A little pork pie hat, maybe. Okay. All right. You're an Army man, but you spend a lot of time in the air. HR, window or aisle?
Aisle for sure.
Why?
Because I got to wander around just a little bit. I can't sit for that long.
Can't sit for that long. What's the longest flight you've ever taken? Australia?
Well, probably to Australia or to Japan, or I used to go to the Middle East from everywhere. Dubai. Those 14, anything more than 14 hours is rough.
I can imagine. You're talking military aircraft?
Yeah, I've flown a lot on military aircraft, and the key to that is if you're on a C-17, you got to get a space on the floor, a comfortable spot on the floor early.
I was going to ask, there's no flatbed seats, right?
No, but the floor of a C-17 is surprisingly comfortable.
Favorite smell or favorite aroma?
Gosh, gunpowder.
Not the smell of napalm in the morning.
No, the smell of your tank after a series of engagements. It's just, I miss it.
The most used app on your phone?
Most used app on my phone. Let me think. I guess, probably navigation app. Yeah, probably navigation app.
Okay.
I'm losing my scouting ability because I'm over relying on technology.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Dogs. Why?
Well, I mean, we've always had dogs, and I'm allergic to cats.
Okay. This is going to be a tough one. You might need a minute to think this one over. You only get one song to listen to for the rest of your life. HR, what is it?
Wow. One song. What could it be? Jeez.
I know it's tough because I know you have a lot of favorite artists, but one track.
Yeah, one track. Gosh,
Kind of sounds hellish when you think about it.
it's like impossible to say, right? I mean, and so let me think. What would it be? I would say, um,
Well, let's take this a different direction. Let's say H.R. McMaster is a professional baseball player. You're playing for the Phillies. What is your walk-up song?
okay, a walk-up song, man. Well, I think more of rugby. What I used to listen to get ready for rugby matches. You know, how about Thorogood Bad to the Bone? or Nazareth, Hair of the Dog, or yeah, one of those real one of the ones that get you fired up.
Final question, HR. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
Okay, 5 words. I hope learning, loving, gosh, you know, respecting, other people's opinions and so forth. Um, Enjoying, and friendship, comradeship.
Yeah, we should expand that to 10 because you could have said family. You could have said
Yeah.
intellectual pursuit. There are a lot of ways to play that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking of when saying loving, taking advantage of being with those who you love, maxing it out.
Okay. Well done. I hope I hope that wasn't too painful for you.
No, I mean, I really don't like talking about the personal stuff, but hey, it was fun. It was fun. And the other guys did it, so I had to do it.
Okay. HR, you should know that one of the biggest demands we have from our viewers is to have wives on the show. And so Mrs. Cochran agreed to do the show, and so did the lovely Mrs. Ferguson. And it's now my honor to bring in to Goodfellows, making her debut, the one and only Katie McMaster. Hello, Katie.
Hey, Bill.
So it's our chance to now drop a lot of dimes on HR. So where shall we start?
Right. Well, where should we start?
Let's start with him promising 5 years in the military and then giving you an extra 29.
Okay, so I met HR when we were out with some friends, and I knew a little bit about the military, but not really. And I was very intrigued with West Point because I thought, oh my gosh, those houses are gorgeous. They're great. And then I went to visit HR at West Point, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I could live like this. And HR said, if we get married, we're never going to live in a house like this because I'm getting out in 5 years. And so I'm like, okay, good. That's fair. We're getting out. I thought for sure I'd get him back to Orange County. He was going to maybe go to law school. He bought a suit and everything. And then he went to a right arm night, and his first sergeant, or maybe was it your first sergeant, HR?
It was my old first sergeant, motor sergeant, and scout platoon sergeant, Ed Romo and Joe Zettelmoyer, those guys, Sergeant Gonzalez, all those guys.
So they said, you got to stay in. So he comes home and he goes, well, maybe I need to stay in. I'm like, okay, let's stay in. So I got how many more extra years than the promised 5?
29.
29 extra years. Thank you.
Love at first sight.
Yes.
HR, you better say yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, now the question everybody.
On the way home in the car, I told everyone I was going to marry him.
Whoa.
And I'll tell you, the night we met, we're exchanging addresses, like in phone numbers, because you wrote letters back then. And the hooker on our rugby team, Bill Coyle, he comes up and goes, "Hey, H, what are you doing? You're never going to see this woman again in your life." He said it right in front of Katie.
And I'm like, I can hear you.
And we like to remind him of that.
Now the question, Katie, a lot of people probably want to know HR and the shaved head. Did he do it on his own? Did he consult you? Did he just spring it on you? How did it happen? And when did it happen?
This is a typical HR story. So HR did not want to wait in line to get his haircut. And he also didn't want to put his head in a bowl like you would at a beauty salon. So it was always crowded at the barbershop. So he said, I'm going to get some shavers or a razor, just do my hair. I'm like, well, I've never done it before, but
Clippers.
But how hard could it be? And then one night, after maybe a glass of wine, he goes, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, do it. and there kept being divots and another divot, and then and I was always correcting the divots, and I said, "Why don't you just shave your head?" And he did. And that's the hair club for men started.
I love it. Tell us what it's like to be a military spouse, Katie. I know a few spouses who've been Army wives, Navy wives, Air Force wives, but how do you prepare for it?
I don't think you really prepare for it. I do think, looking back on my time, it was an absolute honor, privilege, and when you first kind of come in contact with military, you're a bit taken back at the camaraderie and the great friendships that you make, and you pick up and move every 2 years, but you're always moving into another community where everyone's there. And I think I realize it even more now that we're in a civilian life is I do have great neighbors
Mhm.
down in Newport, but you just don't have that neighborly feel like you do in the military, and everybody's on the same page. All of the spouses are doing the same thing. They're all working together. There's there's competition normally because that's human nature, but not really, not like I don't think it would be in a corporate America because I do think that we're fighting we're not I'm not fighting, but we're kind of going forward for a common goal. I think I was most struck by how incredible it was when HR commanded Fort Benning, when we would see every 2 weeks a graduation of basic training soldiers, and it just you get just goosebumps. All these young men and women wanting to serve their country.
Now, one thing our viewers should know that I love about Mrs. McMaster is that she and I share a love for really bad television. And I'm not going to call you a Real Housewife of Orange County, but we know the channel and
Don't
all that.
call
But
me that.
can you get your husband to watch Bravo? Can you get him to watch trash TV, or does he draw the line?
No, he's very funny. In fact, when I have 3 daughters, or we have 3 daughters, and whenever they fight, he blames it on reality television. He's convinced that reality television makes you fight with each other because they all always are enraged about something. I don't think you've ever watched reality TV. One time he did walk in on one of our girls watching, The Shaws of Sunset, and she knew he was gonna give her a hard time if it was reality television, so he said, "What are you watching?" She says, "Oh, a documentary on Persian Americans." And he goes, "Oh, okay."
Well, let's push back with the funk music that he listens to. So
Exactly.
everybody has everybody has an acquired taste. Was HR a good girl dad?
He is a great girl dad.
How
He's a
so?
really good girl's dad. HR's been surrounded by women most of his life. His sister, his mother, his aunts. His father had 4 aunts. He was always kind of the only guy, and then payback is we have 5 grandsons.
I love that. Tell us a bit about your life down in Orange County. So I find one of the great ironies here's the man who served his country on land for decades, and now he takes to the water.
He does take to the water, and I never thought I'd get HR back to Orange County, to be quite honest, but he's very much embracing the life. He is always in a, rain spooner, shorts, and, flip-flops, and paddleboard.
Mhm. But this is the good life. This is California. The side doesn't get enough attention. We focus on the negatives of California too much. But if you can have a nice home in California, a nice place, there's no better place to be. But tell us a bit about how you guys are enjoying. I'm not going to call it the golden age because you both are quite busy. But without HR now in the service and being abroad, how do you guys manage your time? How much time do you get with family, and how much time do you get with each other?
HR works hard, but we do get a lot of time together. And I think our biggest priority is being with our family, with our girls and our grandchildren, our sons-in-law. And then we're very fortunate here in Orange County. My family lives very close too. And HR sister is always visiting. So it's been mostly spending time with family. It's been very nice.
Hmm. Do you have any particular favorite Hoover Fellows besides your husband?
Do I have something? I love all the Hoover Fellows. I love Peter Robinson. I like Neil and the Grumpy Economist. I love Victor. I like Bill Whalen.
Thank you.
I like them all. I do. I love the Hoover family.
Now, what say you to the idea of you and Mrs. Cochran and Mrs. Ferguson taking over Goodfellows and just making it
You
a
know what? I think that we could do a great job.
how would you do it?
Yeah, we have to have another name. Maybe the Housewives of Hoover.
Real Housewives of Hoover.
Real Housewives of Hoover.
Why do I get the feeling that would be my last conversation with Condoleezza Rice if I
I
brought that
think
up?
so too.
None of you are divas. That's the problem. You're not divas.
We could play one on TV though.
Okay, HR, this is your chance to say a few kind words about your lovely wife.
Okay, so I mean, best day of my life was meeting Katie when I was a first year or senior at West Point. Met through some of my rugby teammates and mutual friends that we had, and then Katie signed up for this whole kind of crazy program we've been on for those years in the military. And what Katie didn't say, because she's too modest to say it, is that she was a real anchor for our Army communities wherever we went. And she did a fantastic job kind of building a sense of family among family members, whether it was in the platoons that I had the privilege of leading, the cavalry troop that I commanded, or squadron or regiment, or at Fort Benning. And Katie is a relentlessly positive person. And every time we moved with our daughters, which can be tough, like we're in, I think, our 23rd house or something now, that it wasn't about, oh, can you believe we have to move again? She was like, hey, how exciting. We're going to Germany. We're going to the Mojave Desert at Fort Irwin, California, and so that positive attitude was contagious for military families and with our daughters as well. And of course, Katie had to bear the major burdens of parenthood while I was gone for long stretches of time. I mean, I think 5.5 years or so, Katie, between 2003 and 2012. And then, but really, what I'd like to highlight and talk about is, we talked about, Bill, we were mentioning about like memorial services for soldiers and grieving. Katie did an amazing job at Fort Carson, supporting those who had suffered losses and unimaginable losses of their loved one, their husband, their father, we unfortunately lost had 63 soldiers killed in action when I commanded the 3rd Cavalry Regiment. For every one of those families that were on base, Katie formed a care team, and then after the notification, which occurs when the casualty assistance officer, the chaplain, and in this case our rear detachment commander, makes the notification of the soldier's loss and provides some initial comfort to the family, then that family's left alone. So what Katie did is with this care team is then, the family would be asked, hey, would you like somebody to come help you with what we have to go through here and what happens next, and making phone calls or whatever they can do to be of assistance. And Katie met every single one of those families, went to every memorial service, and was a real rock, for our family members during our combat tour of the 3rd Cav Regiment. So, of course, nobody trains people to do that. There's no, obviously there's, it just depends on the person. And Katie is an extraordinarily empathetic person, and was a great comfort to our family members, but also created, as I mentioned, in every assignment, a real sense of community and a sense of the Army family.
That is very sweet, HR. Final question for the two of you. So I've always thought, Katie, you'd be great to hang out with because you and I could just go down the sewer of reality TV together for a couple of hours. But I've always thought HR would be the perfect guy to go on a road trip with because he's just so full of life and fun, and there wouldn't be anything black to talk about, but there would be one problem: music. There's only so much Grateful Dead I can take. George Clinton. How do you handle the music?
Who's the other person, HR, that you always have blaring here?
Oh gosh, I love like Sean Mullins, maybe.
John Mullen, yes.
Sean Mullins is great. I mean, yeah, I mean, Dispatch, I mean, I've got some pretty wide ranging taste, but I could accommodate your taste, I think.
Yeah, he likes all.
Classic rock, usually some classic rock is mixed
I
in.
know the word blaring.
Yeah, sometimes it is blaring, and I do have to remind him that we don't have to have the neighbors hear our music.
I love that. Well, Katie, thanks for coming on Goodfellows. I hope to see you in the near future, either down south or up here at Stanford.
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. And that's it for this solo episode of Goodfellows with Lieutenant General and Katie McMaster. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back soon with a new episode of Goodfellows. Until then, take care. I mentioned General McMaster's books at the beginning of the show. Let me repeat them. They are At War with Ourselves. That's his year of the Trump White House, and Battlegrounds. And of course, go to the Hoover Institution and subscribe to his excellent Battleground interviews and his Substack, History We Know. On behalf of the Hoover Institution, Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster, all my colleagues here, we hope you enjoyed the show. Till next time, take care. Thanks again for watching.
How we walk the walk.